In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to collect a soil vapor sample using a 400 milliliter Summa canister and using a sample assembly with a vacuum gauge and a flow restrictor inside. This is H&P's what we call our sample assembly. It's got we call it our inline sample assembly. On one end it's got a quick connect, a female quick connect connection, which is going to be connected onto our Summa canister. It goes off into a T with our vacuum gauge, reads in inches of mercury. Fall down there, this piece is our restrictor orifice, so this is going to limit the flow. These orifices allow about 150 milliliters per minute to travel through the assembly, and on the other end we've got a barb that we're going to connect to our probe. Okay, so before we begin sampling, I'm going to connect my sample assembly up to our probe. The probe we have here has a lure lock on-off valve with the lure lock connection, and I have connected a three-way valve onto the barbed end of the sample assembly. I've used a piece of Tygon connector tubing to make that connection, and I've tightly zip-tied these connections to make sure they're airtight. We're going to test all these fittings right now by doing what's called a shut-in test. In order to do that, what we do is we connect our assembly to our vapor probe using these lure lock connections. Twist it on, make sure it's nice and tight. And using the male swage lock adapter piece connected to a syringe, I'm going to connect to the female quick connect piece on the assembly. And now, making sure that the valve on the probe is in the off position, I'm going to draw back on my syringe, creating a vacuum, and then I'll quickly shut my valve off on my syringe, and I can disconnect my quick connect fitting. And so now I've created a vacuum from this quick connect fitting to the valve connection here on the probe. And this is under a vacuum, so our needle is reading that we have about 17 inches of mercury vacuum, and you want to watch that needle. The needle should hold. You want to watch it for about a minute. If there's any drop in the needle, any loss of vacuum, that means you've got a leak somewhere in the system. You'll need to tighten your fittings and retest the system.
Go.
Okay, so we've completed the shut-in test. We know our fittings are tight, and now we're ready to purge our soil vapor well. In order to do that, we can use a 60 ml syringe, and I'm going to connect the syringe onto the side port of the three-way valve connected to my assembly. Got the same lure lock connections. I'm going to twist the syringe in snug, and paying careful attention to the valves. I want to make sure the valve is off at the assembly. I have to open my soil vapor valve, so my inline to the probe, everything is open. I'm ready to start my purge. Before I do that, I'm going to lay down a leak check compound. We sprayed these bags with a liquid leak component, and we're going to place one of these at the base of our probe. This is going to detect for any leaks that we have on our probe, the integrity of our probe. And if you so choose, you can place a second bag, open it up, and place it around your fittings as a double check to make sure all your fittings are tight. The idea is if any of the known compound that we sprayed on the rags shows up in our sample, we know that we've drawn it in through leaks in our fittings. So we've got our leak check down. Now we're ready to purge the well. So we can simply draw back on our syringe. This is a 60 milliliter syringe. And you just draw the sample into the syringe, switch your valve, evacuate the syringe, continuing to pump out your calculated purge volume. You can also, if you have larger purge volumes, you could connect a pump here and pump out the appropriate purge volume as well. One of the benefits of using a syringe to sample is you can regulate the flow rate of the probe. This is a 60 milliliter syringe, so I know if I pull the plunger back and fill the 60 mils in about 18 seconds, that's going to put me at about 200 milliliters per minute. Draw back and evacuate. Once you've completed your purging, you've purged your system the appropriate amount, you can return this valve to the off position. Now your probe is in line, ready to sample at your sample assembly. At this point, I would recommend putting the male quick connect adapter piece back on the syringe, connecting onto the female end, and drawing out 10 milliliters through your sample assembly. This is flushing any dead air or ambient air that was in the assembly. We're drawing the sample in through that, so it will be collected into our Summa canister. After you've taken that 10 milliliters out, you can disconnect your syringe, and now you're ready to connect your Summa canister. Okay, so once you've purged your soil vapor probe the appropriate amount, you're now ready to collect your Summa canister. Now you can disconnect the rubber fitting at the end and make your quick connection. You're now ready to collect the sample into the Summa. All you need to do is open the valve. As soon as we do this, the needle on the vacuum gauge will read how much vacuum is in the canister. It'll read the vacuum between your flow restrictor through to your canister. So once I open the valve, you'll see the needle rise up. We've got about 28 inches of mercury vacuum. So the can is now slowly filling at a rate of about 150 milliliters per minute, and once the can is filled, our vacuum will read down to 0 and we'll have our sample in the canister. The Summa canister is now filled with the soil vapor sample. It is full, our needle is zeroed, so I'm going to shut the valve on the canister, shut it nice and snug. Now you can disconnect at our quick connect fitting, replace the rubber piece to cover the male quick connect, and at this point you want to fill out your tag completely with all the pertinent information and fill out your chain of custody, record the sample on your chain of custody, and then it can be sent back to the lab to be analyzed.